And we've got a packed agenda, as I said earlier. So we're going to start with some introductions, and then I'll provide background on the program. Kaysen's going to walk you through phase 1 of the RCCP. Jennifer will take you through phase 2, and then we'll close with questions and next steps. So the goal today is hopefully that you walk away from this with your questions answered, and you can go to your boards and know exactly what you're going to be doing over the next 12 months, and hopefully get everybody excited. Next slide, please, Kaysen. So one new feature of this round is there are now dedicated points of contact for each region. So our CCP is growing in capacity. Kaysen will be serving as the primary contact for our northern counties, and Jennifer will support the southern counties. So please be sure to keep your RCCP contact looped in when scheduling meetings, especially our public engagement events, as we're all going to try to join those whenever possible. Now we're going to go ahead and take a moment to meet the communities and contractors on today's call. So to save time, I do ask that one person from each group briefly introduce your community or firm by sharing your name, organization, and title when I call on you. And we're going to go with the contractor and then their match community. So I'll make my way down. So Atkins Realist, you are first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Burke. I'm representing Atkins Realis today. I've been with the company for about 4 years. I'm a senior planner with them with a background in geography and GIS.
Awesome. Thank you for being here today. And your community is Pender County. Is Pender County online?
Yes, this is Lee Duncan with Pender County. I'm the resilience planner and floodplain administrator.
Hey, Lee. Good to see you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next we've got Coastal Protection Engineering.
Hey, Mackenzie, this is Ken Wilson. Yeah, we've got a few folks on the line today. I think Adam Priest is on, Tara Martin and Joel Kubich is also on the line today. And we're working with Carolina Beach and Southern Shores, I believe.
Awesome, thanks, Ken. All right, Southern Shores, are you guys online this afternoon?
Cliff Fogman with the town of Southern Shores Town Manager.
Thanks, Cliff. And then Carolina Beach. Carolina Beach is talking, we can't hear you, so you can introduce yourself in the chat. We're going to go ahead and move on. Colliers, do we have you online?
Good afternoon. This is Kara Drain, and I'm with Colliers Engineering and Design. And also on the call with me is Bridget Snover, and we are going to be working with the town of Oak Island.
Thank you, Kara. And Oak Island, are you guys online today?
We are. We have a few people on, but I'm Taylor Davis, and I'm the planning manager.
Awesome. Thanks, Taylor. All right, next we have ESP.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Hannah Delude. I am a hazard mitigation planner with ESP Associates. I also have John Flores on the call, who's also a hazard mitigation planner. We will be working with Holden Beach and Shalott.
Great, thank you. Holden Beach, I think I saw you guys. Are you guys online? If you're having audio issues, it's okay. You can put your name in the chat. I'll go ahead and move to Shalott.
Yeah, Christy Ferguson with the town of Holden Beach and Tim Evans from our planning department are both online. Sorry, I was having a little bit of trouble getting it unmuted here.
Oh, it's okay. Thanks, Christy. All right, town of Shalott.
Yes, ma'am. This is Robert Waring, assistant town manager for the town of Shalott.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, HDR.
Hey, this is Will Fuller with HDR. Going to be project manager and also am a coastal engineer. I've also got Sean Flaherty on, who will also be assisting with the project management as well.
Thanks, Will. All right, town of Southport. All right, hopefully you can try to introduce yourself in the chat. We'll move on to Kimley Horn, who I think may not be online today because they're doing their land use plans. So we're going to move on to Kleinfelder, please.
Hello, this is Julia Lane. I'm a climate resiliency planner with Kleinfelder. And I also have Keely Lane on as well. She'll be our project manager.
Hey, Julia, thank you. All right, so let's go to the city of Jacksonville, please.
Good afternoon, Ryan King, Planning and Inspections Director. I know there's some other members from Jacksonville's team on here. Jennifer Ansel, Michaela Hennigan, I believe Ronald Massey may be on here as well. Looking forward to it.
Great, thanks, Ryan. And then Town of Newport. Cole, are you here?
I'm here, yes. How's it going, everybody? I'm Colbert. I'm the planning director over here at Town of Newport. We also got Kelly Caldwell. She's our town clerk on the call as well.
Thanks, Cole. All right, Moffett and Nickel. I think I saw Dawn. So if you want to introduce yourself in the chat, anyone with Moffett and Nickel, we're gonna, just to keep things moving, I'm gonna move to New Hanover County, please.
This is Rebecca Roth, the Director of the county's Planning and Land Use Department, and I'm here with Tim Lowe, our county engineer.
Great, thank you both for being here. And then City of Wilmington.
Hi, I'm Hillary Taylor. I am a long-range planner with the City of Wilmington, and I'm here today with our Emergency Management and Resiliency Coordinator, Craig Harris.
Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Greg. Okay, RK&K and Mideast.
I'll start.
Hey.
Hi. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
All right. Hi, it's Jamie Heath. I'm a planner with the Mideast Commission Council of Governments, and we're partnered with RK&K. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tris Ford, project manager with RK&K. In addition, I've got my coworkers on the line, Doug Keller, who is a project delivery leader with our Hydro group, and Gordon Marsh, who's a project scientist with our natural resources group.
Good to see you both. Thanks for being online. This is probably what, your third orientation now?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're happy to be here.
Awesome. All right, Town of Coleraine. I'm sorry if I said that wrong.
Hey, this is Jacques Turner with the Town of Coleraine. I'm Mayor Pro Tem for the town.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for being online. All right, Town of Murfreesboro.
Carolyn Brown is on from the town manager for Murfreesboro. I see her on the list. I don't know if she might be having audio problems.
Okay, no problem. And then Beaufort County. I think I saw Mr. Allagood on here too. He might be having audio issues. Oh,
yeah, Brian Allagood is also on. There you go.
Sorry about that. I thought it went through. Didn't I go through it?
Nope, we can hear you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks for being on. Okay, SWCA.
Good afternoon, everyone. Meg Perry, lead environmental planner with SWCA Environmental Consultants, and my colleague Molly Chapin is also on.
Thanks, Meg. Good to see you. Tyrrell County.
Yes, good afternoon. My name's David Clegg. I'm the county manager and county attorney for Tyrrell County.
Hey, David, thanks for being on.
Sure, thank you.
WSE.
Hi, this is Jeannie Lewis and Bella Purdy from Weston and Sampson Engineers. We're excited to be working with Pasquotank again and to meet Dare County.
Thanks, Jeannie. Good to see you guys again. All right, so let's move to Pasquotank County.
Good afternoon. This is Shelley Cox. I'm Planning Inspections Director for Pasquotank County.
Hey, Shelley. And then Dare County.
Hey, this is Barton Grover, Grants and Water Administrator with Dare County. Charlie Sanders is also here, Community Conservationist for Dare County.
Thanks, Barton. All right, WSP.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure. Can you hear me now?
Hey, David. Yep, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Yep. Perfect. I'm David Stroud with WSP, leading the Hazard Mitigation and Planning Group with our company. Also on the call is Ranger Ruffins, one of our resilience hazard mitigation planners.
Thanks, David. And then Hyde County. Okay, Hyde, if you're there, just go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat for me. And then do we have anyone with Coastal Dynamics Design Lab or the town of Manio? I know you guys are doing a modified scope of work, so you may not be online.
Yep, I'm here. Andy Fox with the Coastal Dynamics Design Lab. I'm a landscape architect, environmental planner. We're also working in collaboration with Robinson Design Engineers in a community technical assistance role with the town of Manio.
Good to see you, Andy. Thanks for being online. And then Manio, are you guys on? They may not be. Okay, well, good. Thank you guys for being quick. I know I wish we could have had that, be a little bit longer, but I want to get us through our agenda today. So Kason, if you can go ahead and hit the next slide. All right, so I'm just going to give a little bit of program background so everyone kind of gets an idea of how we got to where we're at today. So the RCCP essentially builds on earlier resilience efforts in the state. So in 2016, our office piloted a project called RENA, which stands for Resilience Evaluation and Needs Assessment. And we worked with 5 CAMA counties or communities. So it was the town of Duck, Edenton, Hatteras Village, Oriental, and Pine Knoll Shores. And through that work, we mapped assets, engaged with the public, and identified vulnerabilities, which not only improved local resilience planning, but also supported communities in pursuing grant funding. So following Hurricane Florence in 2018 that we're all very familiar with, Governor Cooper issued Executive Order 80, and that led to the state's first climate risk assessment and resilience plan. And that plan ultimately led to the creation of the RCCP. We received funding from the General Assembly and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to begin implementing the framework. So the RCCP is the first program of its kind in North Carolina, and we cover all 20, we call them CAMA counties, the Coastal Area Management Act counties. And our purpose is to help communities assess risk and vulnerability, identify priority projects, and connect communities with funding for project implementation. Next slide, please. Thanks, Kason. So the program runs in 4 phases, and phases 1 and 2 run concurrently, and that's what we're here to talk about today. And Jennifer and Kason will go into way more detail about this, but phases 1 and 2 are essentially a lot of public engagement, conducting a risk and vulnerability assessment, and then identifying solutions to the hazards that you're facing. And then once you've completed phases 1 and 2, you'll be eligible for phase 3 funding, which is our engineering, design, and permitting phase. And then finally, once you've gotten through phase 3, you'll be eligible for phase 4 funding, which is our implementation grants for shovel-ready projects. So to date, we have received approximately $12.5 million from the General Assembly and $6.7 million from National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So those are our 2 primary pots of funding. And we've been able to leverage our state funding to use as match to receive our NIFWIF grant funding. So the RCCP operates solely on non-reoccurring state appropriations and then our federal grants. So we're continually requesting reoccurring funding. That gives you a sense of where our money is coming from. And then to date, we've received, to total of that all together, it's about $19 million in combined state and federal support. And this shows the distribution over the 4 phases. So with you guys included, we're now at 60 communities getting the planning and risk and vulnerability assessment done. We've got 48 grants for phase 3. That seems to be where a lot of communities are at. You're needing to get some preliminary site plans done. And then 13 grants for phase 4 in construction. And we do have 5 of those complete now. Just to give you a sense of your future within this program. Next slide. So the RCCP Planning Handbook is a resource that walks communities and contractors through the steps and requirements of phases 1 and 2. And the technical appendix in the back provides links to additional information such as templates, maps, and formatting suggestions for deliverables, as well as examples from previous rounds of the RCCP. So your contractor's scope of work closely aligns with this handbook. And the key deliverables that Jennifer is going to go into more detail, but just so you get a sense of what are you going to get at the end of this 12 months. Essentially, you're going to get a resilience strategy. So one of the key parts is going to be a vulnerability assessment report that's going to evaluate your risks to your critical assets, your natural infrastructure, and your vulnerable populations from hazards. So you'll be looking at flooding, storm surge, sea level rise. You can also look at wind and erosion, and we do have some folks looking at wildfire. And then the second major piece is going to be your project portfolio. So this is a really big piece that we want communities to be able to extract information and put it right in a grant application. So these will be your prioritized projects aimed at reducing your risk to your coastal hazards. And then the final piece is you will be getting GIS data delivered in a map package format, and that will be for the communities as well as internally. We're working to kind of standardize that data and make it publicly available. That's an ongoing project. To be more information soon. And then I think that pushes it to you, Kason. I'll go ahead and pass the mic to you.
Yeah, that does it. Thank you, Mackenzie. And thank you all for being here today. As Mackenzie was saying at the beginning, my name is Kason Wally. I'm one of the coastal resilience specialists here at the Division of Coastal Management and the point of contact for our northern communities. I know I've spoken with some of you already, so welcome to those that I haven't spoken with, and great to see you again, those that I have. So I'm going to get us started talking about phase one. This is probably the lengthiest part of the presentation today. So I'm going to move pretty quickly through these slides just so we stay on time. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat. Mackenzie and Jennifer can help answer those as we go, or feel free to just save those until the end of the presentation. We'll have some time for questions and things like that as well. So beginning with step one, there are 6 steps in total, but this is where you're going to develop your community action team, what we like to call the CAT team. And so essentially this is a core team within the community that's made up of key stakeholders that are particularly invested in this resilience process. So that could be anybody with a vested interest in resilience, including people like city planners, natural resource specialists, educators, first responders, business owners, town government staff. It's really up to you guys who you want involved in this process. But ideally, the members are going to be folks that are both passionate about participating in the program and also representative of the community's interests and demographics as well. As many of you already know, community representation helps build relationships and trust in this process, as well as a shared understanding of priorities and goals. And in doing so, we create a bit of a foundation for resilience actions and planning that's reflective of not only the goals of this program, but each community's unique wants and needs. So some considerations on how to choose community action team members. This is a participatory process, meaning that it takes a lot of conversation and dialogue between the community action team and the contractor as you move through phases 1 and 2. The contractor and the community will work together to select CAT members through a review of key stakeholders and folks within the jurisdiction that might be interested in being a part of this process. Some of you on the call today may already intend to serve on a community action team, or you might have some folks in mind who'd be a good fit. You know, even in the applications, we ask to go ahead and start thinking about who you might want to be involved in. And I know a lot of great candidates were already mentioned there as well. It's always going to be a good idea to explore all your potential options, because there's likely people that you may not have considered yet who might still be an excellent choice to invite onto the CAT teams. And to facilitate that process, we've included a few questions to ask when choosing representative community stakeholders to serve on the CAT teams. And these lists within this presentation are not necessarily exhaustive. That program handbook is your best friend, and that's where you'll find a lot of this information. Well, really all of this information and plus more as well. But some things you might want to consider are who holds trust or is already seen as a leader in the community, who among the community is often underrepresented in decision making, maybe who has been or is responsible for community planning and policy. While I won't touch on all these questions, these are just kind of to get you thinking about how you could go about choosing some more people or getting in touch with them. So the minimum requirements for step 1 are to develop that inclusive and diverse community action team with at least 5 people. So that's a minimum, but you're welcome to have as many people on that team as you like. If there are any gaps in the expertise of those folks that are selected for the community action team, your contractor will work with you to help fill that role. And then you'll appoint one of those people as what we refer to as like a champion of the community action team. And that's kind of the lead point person. They serve as a bit of a liaison between the folks here on staff at the Division of Coastal Management, your contractor, and the broader community. And then when you go through this process, you'll summarize that, and how you develop the community action team, who's on it, and what their experience is. And that'll all be included in that resilience strategy, which is the first deliverable that Mackenzie mentioned. Step 2 is to review existing plans and efforts. So this is going to be to review any relevant existing plans and resilience efforts that are applicable to your community. These documents could be things like regional hazard mitigation plans, stormwater management plans, watershed restoration plans, or even your CAMA land use plans. There are some other examples on the right-hand side of the screen there. So non-regulatory programs, ordinances, regional and local plans as well. And so you have a lot of options of things to review. And I think the most important part here is that it's just a really comprehensive review. The objective is to see, where you're at right now and what gaps exist that might need to be filled. Which leads me to this slide, identifying and filling those gaps. Once a review of existing data and information is complete, you'll want to identify and document additional resources that might be beneficial for the community's vulnerability and risk assessment. So those are things like an inventory of critical assets and natural infrastructure, social vulnerability data, as well as the best available economic data on critical assets and community and components of the community. And so the idea here is to compile this information and group it into common categories. Like I said, to identify those knowledge gaps or areas where you can focus your efforts and gather that supplemental information. If you're not sure what documents to include and you'd like some more in-depth examples, those can be found in the handbook, like the technical appendix, or you can feel free to reach out to us here at DCM as well. Essentially, this process gets you a baseline idea of where the community stands in relation to resilience efforts, and then identifies those areas for improvement. So we've included on the right-hand side of the screen again, just an example. This was from SWCA during the first round. It's just one way to kind of visualize this material. But you can see there the plans that were reviewed, kind of a visual representation of what's in each plan, and you can kind of start to see some of those gaps already coming forward in areas where they may have needed to focus at that time, or in this case, where you'll need to focus during this process. So the minimum requirements for step 2, review existing local and regional resources, focusing on the following areas of overlap. Inventory of critical assets, sea level rise projections, risk assessments, resilience-related projects. And then to identify and fill any information gaps for the vulnerability assessment, and identify and list or visually represent any data or knowledge gaps that exist as well. Step 3 is to set your vision and goals. So the vision is an aspirational statement for where the community wants to be in the future, and it's going to be unique to each and every community. I've included an example here on the slide from the town of Hertford. They said, the town of Hertford is a vibrant, diverse community committed to helping its residents thrive, celebrating its riverfront history, culture, and distinctive character while promoting commercial and residential growth, showcasing the beauty and natural resources of the Perquimans River, and integrating coastal resilience practices to achieve adverse environmental impacts. So pretty broad statement there. It's just kind of a guiding statement. On the other hand, the goals that you develop to support the vision statement, these need to be a little bit more specific and measurable. And it's useful to consider what's called the triple bottom line approach when you're thinking through goal setting for the community. And that essentially just means that goals should fall into one of 3 categories across the spectrum, which are economic goals, people-related goals, and then planet or nature-based focused goals as well. So kind of the health of the economy, the health of the people, and the health of the planet. And that's kind of just a good sort of guiding trio in how you can think about setting up those goals. So minimum requirements for step 3, pretty straightforward here. Just develop that community resilience vision statement, as well as a list of those locally driven goals. The CAT team will work closely with the contractor to develop these as well. And just on this slide, something I wanted to mention too, this is just another example here of some goals. I believe this was from Holly Ridge. And it was just interesting how they visually represented these. You can really kind of see how holistic they are. And so, you know, there's everything from emergency operations and communications to the inclusion of nature-based solutions. And just kind of a nice way to be able to see that represented visually instead of, you know, just bullet points, but it's totally up to you how you want to put that together. All right, on to step 4. So at this stage, you'll work together to develop a community engagement strategy. The goal here is to ensure participation from a diverse array of people within the community who can really provide those qualitative insights into the values and assets of the community that might not be available from data or maps alone. Additionally, your strategy must outline a plan to incorporate the principles of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in the planning process. So ultimately, your community engagement strategy should ensure the following things. It should ensure equitable representation and outcomes for vulnerable populations. It should build trust, relationships, and diverse partnerships within the community. It should provide feedback and validation of the vulnerability assessment, step 5. So that's kind of that qualitative piece. You've got all the information about critical assets and socially vulnerable populations, so on and so forth. And then this is kind of that real fine-grained input that feeds into that vulnerability assessment. And finally, it should ensure that it will assist with prioritizing projects in phase 2 of the RCCP, which Jennifer will go over in a little bit more detail here shortly. So who are the stakeholders that you might want to include and make sure that you're capturing within that kind of public-facing piece of the program when you're getting that public input? I've included here some guidelines from NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They've done a lot of great work on community engagement. And again, I won't read this whole slide here, but it's a great little resource also in the handbook. But you know, you might want to look at, for example, people who are financially invested in the resource. So residents of the community, resource users, businesses and government. You might also look at, speaking of government, representatives of those people in the community. I know we have a lot of town staff on the call right now. We see those folks in the CAT teams all the time. But we've also seen emergency first responders, people in academia. So it's a huge list of people who might participate both on the CAT team, but also in public meetings, and getting them involved is really important. So here's just some more kind of key considerations when talking about the community engagement strategy. So when you're interacting with the broader community and soliciting their input, there are some approaches that we'd like you to consider. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but I'll go through a couple here. So we'd like you to think about involving vulnerable and historically underrepresented populations, to identify and incorporate trusted neighborhood level leaders. Consider going to different groups in the community rather than relying on the community to approach you. We've found that it's great to kind of tag on to events that are already ongoing in the community, like parades or festivals, things like that, where people are already going to be. That seems to be great for engagement. Considering the time restraints of the public, so work, school, childcare, those sorts of things in terms of when you plan community engagement events. And to be sure to explain to folks who are a little less maybe familiar with resilience, what the community vision is, what are the goals, and what is this process doing, and how that can affect them. Just a couple more here. You might consider hosting an open house or workshop to present potential adaptation strategies, to ask for the public's input. And you might brainstorm activities that go beyond simply informing or consulting the community about resilience. So that's involving stakeholders more directly in the mapping activities, inviting communities to participate in field trips to discuss areas of concern. That's a great option for getting some of that qualitative feedback, places where people have seen flooding that's not necessarily on some of the larger maps and models. And consider things like live polling, surveys, and interactive websites. Let's see here. This is just a quick table that kind of goes over some additional examples, different things that you might consider that kind of are outside of the box of what public engagement might normally look like. That could be things like focus groups. We already mentioned field trips. In communities where maybe social media isn't as prevalent, or it's not as easy to get, like something out over social media, you might consider like a mail survey, something like that. There's just a lot of different things that within each community being unique, we like you to really think about all the different possibilities. Okay, so minimum requirements for step 4, to develop a stakeholder engagement strategy for involving community members during the following steps of the program. So the first is the risk and vulnerability assessment, which I'm going to cover next. And the second is the project development, or looking at kind of the alternative analysis process of determining what projects are going to go into the portfolio and getting feedback on what type of projects the community would like to see. And then to develop an approach for targeted outreach to vulnerable and historically underrepresented members of the community. Okay, step 5 is to identify and map critical assets, natural infrastructure, and socially vulnerable populations. The contractor will work with the community action team to identify any locally specific critical assets, vulnerable populations, and natural infrastructure to include within the risk and vulnerability assessment. So this will need to be done using ArcGIS, so that all those maps are relatively standardized and accessible, both to the communities, but us here at DCM as well. And then we can add those to our database. Okay, so first up is who would be a good idea to involve in this step. Some of this material may already exist in previous resilience plans, those that you've gone over, but it's a good idea to make sure all assets are completely updated. You'll want to involve community stakeholders such as government employees, first responders, community leaders, and other people who have a working knowledge of assets within the community. As you begin to identify assets and compile them, there are some questions that might be helpful to consider in this process as well. So things like, are the assets critical for the continuity of daily operations in the community? Are the assets critical for life and safety, so like evacuation routes or hospitals? Are the assets central to economic functioning and vitality? Lots of communities have downtown sort of economic districts. Those are absolutely critical assets you'd want to include. Are the assets an integral part of community cohesiveness? And do the assets have a history of damage from natural hazards? So kind of just looking at, what are the most important aspects of the community, both from an emergency response standpoint, but also from kind of a cultural heritage standpoint, and what makes the community unique and cohesive as a whole. So overall, you'll want to look at cultural resources, natural resources, built infrastructure, and depending on who you ask, you're probably going to get different answers. And so that's why it's important to really rely on that community engagement strategy to get a representative sample from the whole community. So you're really seeing the full picture there. We do have a list of required assets that must be identified if they exist in the community. So those are roads and evacuation routes, water and sewer lines, government buildings and offices, public safety or emergency services, schools, healthcare, and health services, as well as natural assets. So natural areas, marshland, open areas, like parks, et cetera. And this, just because this is a minimum doesn't mean you can't go beyond it. It's always helpful. If it's something that a community member mentions as being important, that's still absolutely okay to include, even if it's not specifically listed there. Things like electrical infrastructure, for example, you could absolutely include that. Let's see, there's a great resource here I wanted to mention. It's called the Community Lifelines Toolkit. It's developed by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And that's in our handbook as well, but it just does a really good job of breaking down different types of services and assets in a community. And it provides you with a template similar to what you see at the bottom of the screen here, where you can really just kind of go through, lay those out, and have all their attributes all in one place. And it's a great place to start. So the second piece is social vulnerability. So there are many tools you can use for this process. The handbook primarily suggests both the CDC's Social Vulnerability Index, so that's the Center for Disease Control's SVI, or Social Vulnerability Index, and FEMA's Resilience Analysis and Planning Tool, or the RAPT. And that gives you really good data at the census tract level for social vulnerability in communities. It also has some hazard layers and data as well, I believe specifically in the RAPT, but these are a great place to start, and there's more resources in the technical appendix. There also may be resources that you folks have used in the past that you'd like to use here. That's all absolutely fair game. You can approach this however makes the best sense to you. So the minimum requirements for step 5 are to map critical assets, areas of social vulnerability, and natural infrastructure identified by the community action team using ArcGIS. And there's an example there on the right-hand side of the screen. You can see kind of in the legend there's banks, cultural sites, emergency services. This was also created by SWCA, it looks like. But the idea here is to start building the basis for that risk and vulnerability assessment. So it's looking at like where the critical assets are in the socially vulnerable populations are. And then the next step is kind of overlaying that with vulnerability data in terms of coastal hazards. So which of these communities or critical assets are going to be affected by flooding or erosion or heat or those sorts of things. Okay, so this is step 6. This is the last step in phase 1, but it is a 3-parter. So this one's a little bit longer. Step 6 covers conducting the risk and vulnerability assessment. There are 3 pieces here. So there's 1, identifying and mapping hazards. The second piece is to assess vulnerability of critical assets and socially vulnerable populations to those hazards. And the third piece is to estimate risk. So I'm going to get started here with just 6A, which is identifying and mapping the hazards. So first, you'll identify and map potential hazards and stressors. So these are things like sea level rise, existing floodplains, areas of risk of soil erosion. We've also had some folks look at extreme heat and wildfire as well. But to accomplish this, teams should reference existing studies, reports, and plans, including local and regional hazard mitigation plans, and the data that's referenced in the handbook. So this is kind of going back to a lot of that existing data that you guys will have scoped out, prior to this point. And so that's a big part of why in step 2, you'll have conducted that literature review, looking at all those existing plans. And if you haven't done so already at this point, you'll identify any remaining qualitative or quantitative gaps necessary to complete the risk and vulnerability assessment. So kind of doing one final pass to see, have we accounted for everything we need to here before you kind of start layering everything together. So I just wanted to quickly cover some potential hazards, which are not always climate related. So there are the things that you hear about a lot, like sea level rise, flooding, storm surge, shoreline erosion. But there also are other things that you might want to consider taking into account. So land cover changes, increase in impervious surfaces, causing a lot of runoff or altered drainage patterns. There's also subsidence you might want to consider, especially in low-lying areas where the land is, moving downwards and the water table is coming up. That can cause a lot of flooding as well. Economic shifts and population dynamics. So just another opportunity to kind of think about, what sort of things might we want to account for in this resilience strategy and try to address with our project portfolios beyond the kind of typical climate stuff that we talk about a lot. So the minimum requirements for identifying and mapping the hazards are to first review any local or regional hazard mitigation plans, extract that data and information and identify any remaining gaps to fill. You'll identify hazards and stressors to include in the risk and vulnerability assessment. At a minimum, we request that this includes flooding, and that's rainfall flooding, tidal, and riverine flooding, storm surge, and a 30-year sea level rise projection. But again, this is just a minimum requirement, and you can include any hazards that are particularly at risk for your community. And then you'll map the geographic extent of the hazards and begin overlaying them with those community assets that were developed or identified in step 5. So the next part of step 6, 6B, is to assess the community vulnerability. And a simplified way of thinking about this step in determining vulnerability is to consider it in sort of this equation format. So first I'll go over kind of what the definitions are here quickly. So exposure is the degree of stress that affects an asset, including the magnitude and frequency of an event. Sensitivity is the degree to which a built, natural, or human system will be impacted by climate change conditions. And adaptive capacity is the ability of a system to adjust or rebound to changes, manage damages, and take advantages of opportunities to cope with the consequences of coastal hazards. And so each of these elements are kind of put together into this this equation here. And essentially it's exposure, or the frequency to and degree to which a critical asset is exposed to coastal hazards, plus its sensitivity, or how endangered that critical asset is, minus its ability to absorb or respond to those shocks. So that's its adaptive capacity. And all of that together gives you an overall vulnerability. And this is kind of what it looks like here. This is what it goes into. So the idea is to assign numerical values to each of those variables. And then as you add up the exposure and sensitivity and subtract its ability to kind of absorb those shocks, then you can develop an overall vulnerability score that gives you an idea of exactly how vulnerable that critical asset or population actually is to a particular hazard. And we'll go into this in more detail in our contractor training. But the idea here is just to kind of give you an idea of how, through using that equation and developing this sort of matrix that looks at all of the different critical assets and assigns them vulnerability scores, you can kind of start to see which elements of the community are most at risk. And from there, you can start that kind of alternatives analysis of looking at, you know, what sort of projects might be the best fit to solve this problem. So the minimum requirements for step 6B are to define thresholds and criteria that'll be used to classify the vulnerability of critical assets as low, medium, or high for each vulnerability metric, and to estimate the cumulative vulnerability of critical assets and natural infrastructure using the vulnerability index. All right, we're almost done here with phase 1. So this is step 6C, estimating risk. So this involves kind of 4 pieces. The first is assessing potential financial losses from hazards to determine what action is needed. So kind of like, what is the financial result if we were to lose a critical asset? Using your community's hazard mitigation plan to pull building values, infrastructure data, and asset information for assigning those dollar values. Updating or supplementing this data with more recent locally driven information when possible, from that public outreach and from the CAT team. And then using the risk estimates to help the community action team identify priority areas for action and develop strategies to reduce risk and strengthen resilience. So what we're asking you to do here really is just to quantify the assets at risk, and if possible, make a value determination to help with those cost benefit estimations. And this little template here is extremely simplified, just a basic template, but just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here. So when you get done moving through this process, you know, you could say, for example, well, we know that we have 19 different critical facilities within the community. If we were to lose all of those because they happen to be in the floodplain, you know, we're looking at losses of $23 million. And so, you know, what can we do to address this issue? So that's kind of the gist of step 6 there. So the minimum requirements for 6C are to gather supplemental data as needed beyond what the general hazard mitigation plan provides, and to estimate the risk of the critical assets identified by using the templates provided in the handbook, or you can create your own template, something similar to the example that I was just showing, maybe with a little more detail there, but kind of up to you guys how you want to approach that. So that kind of does it for phase 1. I know that was a lot. Like I said, please feel free to drop questions in the chat. I can kind of try to start answering those as I pass this off to Jennifer, or we can save them till the end. But thank you guys very much. And Jennifer, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Fickler. I'm the other coastal resilience specialist here with DCM. And I'm going to be taking us through phase 2, which involves identifying and prioritizing your solutions into a project portfolio. So next slide, please, Casey. So in phase 2, the contractor will work with the community to identify, plan, and prioritize a combination of policy, non-structural, structural, and hybrid actions, including the use of natural and nature-based solutions. These potential resilience projects will then be organized within a project portfolio. The portfolio should be based on the vulnerability assessment conducted in phase 1 that Kason just talked about. So for example, the most critical asset or socially vulnerable population identified within the community should ideally be associated with a project included in the portfolio. So the key steps for phase 2, step 1 are to review the vulnerability assessment and identify a suite of potential solutions. Next slide. Natural or nature-based solutions integrate sustainable planning, design, engineering, and natural resource management into the built environment to enhance resilience and climate adaptation. These solutions leverage ecosystem services such as wetlands, improving water quality, and incorporate them into infrastructure projects like bioswales in urban areas. Nature-based solutions provide both monetary benefits like higher property values and storm protection, and non-monetary benefits, such as better recreational spaces and healthier coastlines. They also offer more flexibility in securing grant funding, especially for resilience-focused initiatives. So important notes here, I will be repeating this several times throughout the presentation, but is that at least one project in your portfolio must be nature-based, and any project seeking RCCP phase 3 or 4 funding must include a nature-based component. So next slide. Flooding is one of North Carolina's most common and costly natural hazard threats, as we all well know. We want you to consider non-structural policy-related solutions, such as flood damage prevention ordinances and open space recreation plans, as well as structural flood mitigation and stormwater management measures during your project development. Next slide, please. Another aspect you may wish to consider is the National Flood Insurance Program Community Rating System, the CRS. This is a voluntary incentive program that recognizes and encourages community floodplain management practices that exceed the minimum requirements of the National Flood Insurance Program. Identifying potential projects within phase 2, which overlap with your CRS activities, will have an added benefit for the community. And you can consider connecting to a network of participating CRS communities, such as the Outer Banks CRS Users Group or the Southeast CRS Users Group. Next slide. Effective pre-disaster planning lays the groundwork for a more sustainable and resilient community. It helps communities adapt to changing conditions, identify future hazards, and recover quickly from these disruptions. By proactively addressing risk through solutions, policies, and action plans, communities strengthen both their resilience and sustainability. Pre-disaster planning boosts resilience by building partnerships, structures, and communication systems that support faster, more inclusive recovery, embedding hazard mitigation into reinvestment decisions, outlining clear steps to implement resilience building actions, and raising awareness of resilience as a key factor in community planning. Next slide. So for phase 2, step 1, the minimum requirements is to develop a portfolio of resilience projects aimed at reducing exposure and sensitivity to hazards, as well as strengthening the adaptive capacity of your community assets and vulnerable populations, and ensure that each portfolio has at least 5 projects and includes at least one nature-based solution. Next slide. So phase 2, step 2, after brainstorming potential adaptation strategies with the community, it's time for the team to evaluate the priority and prioritize actions. So to do so, you'll want to evaluate your strategies and their feasibility, including a cost-benefit estimation. Consolidate and prioritize those strategies based on their usefulness to the community. As outlined in the community engagement strategies from phase 1, step 4, communities should host a public forum to allow for feedback during the step to ensure transparency and continue to build community support. Next slide.
Thoroughly evaluating strategy feasibility is essential to building effective resilient solutions. Cost benefit analysis is a key component for evaluating your strategies. Using community defined criteria, you can assign high, medium, or low ratings to each proposed solution based on the costs and benefits. The stapling method can help prioritize projects by assessing their social, technical, administrative, political, legal, economic, and environmental factors. There's additional guidance that's available in the technical appendix of the RCCP for this, of the RCCP handbook for this. Next slide. Here's the table that should be used to detail each of your top 5 priority projects. The project descriptions here are crucial as these are what the communities will use for grant applications. And these should have as much detail as possible, including relevant numerical values. So if you have a living shoreline, for example, don't just say living shoreline, say 1,500 linear feet of a living shoreline. We need specific locations for the projects, the hazard or the hazards the project is addressing, whether it's stormwater flooding or sunny day flooding or whatever that might be. The supporting function of the project, so is it supporting transportation, water quality, communications, the type of solution, if it's infrastructure or policy or whatever it may be, the estimated timeline, the responsible entity, list of any potential partners and any potential funding sources is really important. We need the estimated costs, so as accurately as that can possibly be given, anticipated community benefit, and then the priority ranking, so the high, medium, and low mentioned before, and a relevant project site map. We love a good map. Next slide. So the minimum requirements for phase 2, step 2 is to solicit the public input on projects and evaluate projects' applicability and longevity, and then prioritize at least 5 projects organized using the template from the previous slide. And remembering that one of the top 5 should be nature-based. Next slide. So to recap phases 1 and 2, at the end of this whole process, the final deliverable is a resilience strategy, which consists of the CAT report, the community engagement strategy, the risk and vulnerability assessment, and the prioritized project portfolio. So having a plan document like this helps to provide clarity of purpose, attract funding, and provide a more direct path to implementation for communities. Next slide. So after phase 2, it's important to think about how your community will continue this effort. So some of those efforts can be continuing your CAT team meetings to maintain that network to help address future concerns. Consider integrating your resilience strategy into your CAMA land use plan or any other resilience-related policy documents. Complete any additional feasibility studies to further assess some of these projects. Leverage your new resilience strategy toward additional grant opportunities, such as RCCP phase 3 funding. Again, that would have to be a nature-based component to that. And then provide us with any feedback on the RCCP process to help us improve our efforts. We will be sending out surveys at the end of phases 1 and 2 to kind of gather that feedback. Next slide. So what's next after today in the short term? Contractor training is next week. I believe it's Tuesday, September 16th. Once your contractor has an executed contract with the state, the work can begin on your projects. We do recommend executing an MOU with your contractor just to set expectations. That's not a requirement, but it's recommended. And then begin assembling your CATs, your community action teams. If you find that you're having trouble filling some of those roles, let us know. We can try and help fill some of those gaps. And then also let us know once you have those meetings scheduled, because we would like to attend as many of those as we can. Then once work has started on your projects, contractors can submit an invoice to DCM every 3 months. And then the contract period has been extended to 12 months for this round of phases 1 and 2, which is a little different than last round, where it was 9 months. So a little bit more time to get these projects completed. Then that is going to wrap up the presentation part. I'll pass it to Mackenzie in case if they have anything to add before we open it up for questions and discussions from anybody.
No, great job, Jennifer. Thank you very much. So I think, yeah, we can go ahead and open things up for questions, unless Mackenzie, there's anything you'd like to add.
No, I think you guys did a great job, and especially hitting the point at the end, Jennifer, that I know a question for communities is, well, when can we get started? And we are in the contracting process with your contractors now. That paperwork is underway. And once they've got an executed contract, which means your contractor and DEQ have both signed, then work can start. So that should be happening within the next couple of weeks, just to give you a timeline. Was the presentation so great? No one has questions. We answered all the questions. We will be sending out these slides and the recording in case you have staff that missed today and want to look through some of this information.
And we're always available too. If you'd like to, you can always just give me a call or shoot me an email, or any of us really, and we're happy to answer any questions, things like that. Hey, yeah, Meg.
Less of a question, more just wanted to reinforce, having been through this process a couple times before, to encourage communities and contractors really to see your DCM contact as a partner in this. They are there to help, so don't hesitate to reach out with questions.
Thank you, Meg. Yeah, absolutely. One of the best aspects, I think, that's come out of this community are the partnerships that have been formed, and we are certainly here to help. I see a question in the chat. Does phase 2 include a finalized CAMA land use plan, or is that separate? So that's separate. The main RCCP process does not include updates to a CAMA land use plan. We are piloting an initiative this time within just a few select communities to do CAMA land use plan updates. That process for those communities will happen at the same time. But generally with the phase 1 and 2, for most communities participating, that doesn't involve a CAMA land use plan update.
And Sarah, I'll just add, in your project portfolio, you can prioritize that you want your CAMA land use plan updated. You're saying for Pamlico? Yes, Pamlico County was selected as one of the pilot communities to get your CAMA land use plan updated. And as Casey mentioned, we're doing this pilot project through funding that we got through National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, where we're kind of doing something new. We're going to start incorporating resiliency into CAMA land use plans. So wish us luck. We have a revised scope of work, and we're going to be working with those communities and contractors, and hopefully we'll have a framework in the next 12 months that other communities could use, and we'd have some state guidance on how to do that. And just to give you guys, it's going to be Hyde County, Pamlico County, and Elizabeth City. Those are the 3 that will be participating in that pilot. All right, well, if there's no more questions, we can go ahead and give you back almost 20 minutes of your day. We wanted to make sure we had enough time in case presentations ran long or there was lots of discussion. So we really appreciate your time being here today. I know you guys all have a lot going on. So this was just good to get everybody together and go through this as a group. We're excited about this cohort. We all love this program and don't hesitate to reach out if questions pop up. And we're excited to get started. You guys have a great rest of the week.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.